Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Carrie, I'm fired up because I can tell by the pre-recording conversation we had with Ira Bates, this is going to be fun. So our guest today is Ira Bates, and he is currently the Assistant Vice President and Community Development Director or Officer at the First Bank. So Ira, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just jump right in. I know from your background in not-for-profits that community is important to you. So what exactly does the Community Development Director do at the First Bank?
Okay, well, first of all, our role in the Community Development Department as far as what I do, I'm really responsible for compliance for the bank in my area.
Okay.
We have roughly 4 community development officers throughout our footprint. And for me, I handle the loans, investments, and services of the bank. That doesn't mean much to a lot of people, but we are regulated by the OCC, the Office of Comp Controller out of the Treasury Department. And every bank have regulators. So we have to make sure that whatever we're doing is a portion of what we do is serving the low to moderate income people.
Okay.
And so with that being said, the loans have to be low to moderate income purpose. I look for certain things as economic development, affordable housing, and so on and so forth. The same thing with services. We have people on boards. We have people teaching financial education, so on and so forth. So that's a lot of what we do. And then investments. That's the part that most nonprofits love because we have to give money back to the community.
Okay. So obviously, I mean, really kind of keyed in with that development and bettering the community, right, through the through loans and investments and that kind of thing.
Correct. Which
really kind of dovetails into your prior life, which was spent in not-for-profits, right?
Yes.
And you ran through a laundry list. I'm talking about the United Way, Habitat for Humanity, Victory Health,
Yes.
Foley Housing Authority, I mean, Life Sync Academy, all those things you've been involved in and still are to some extent.
Yes.
Executive director, I think, for the Mobile Fairgrounds, right? So
yes, I was the board chair for the fairground. Yes.
Okay. So been involved in a lot on the community side of things. What drew you to that? I mean, obviously you have a love for community and for giving back, but what about those things kind of, drew you to them?
I think the most part is just the way that I grew up. I grew up here in Mobile. I remember talking to an old mayor, Mayor Sam Jones at one time, and we had a meeting, and one day he's like, what kept you here in Mobile after you graduated from college? And I said, well, for the most part, because you can go anywhere you want to go to in the world. We can take our airport and go to Atlanta, and it opens us up to the world. However, we're big enough to do a lot of things that we're doing here in Mobile, but small enough to have that hometown feel. And so that really started the beginning for me.
So talk a little bit about those positions with those not-for-profits, because you have obviously you're in a leadership role, but you have a unique set of challenges, I guess is a good word, with, fundraising is always an issue, financing and getting, money to operate. So how did you kind of lead through some of those challenges?
Well, I tell you this, starting with the United Way, that was never, ever my intent. I thought after graduating college, I was going to go to a Fortune 500 company, work my way up. And, we had all these great dreams. But fate would have it for me just to make my way to the nonprofit. So when I started at United Way, I started there as to, raise money for the community through organizations. And we had a challenge every year. One year we had a hurricane that came through. It wasn't, matter of fact, the year that I was hired, we had a hurricane over on the Panhandle. So instead of me starting on a Monday, I think I started on a Wednesday. Okay, that was the first one. The next year we had Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, wow, that was a big one.
And Hurricane Katrina hit, and it was huge. And we had to go through these things because we had to be cognizant of knowing that people were going to give to Red Cross. They were going to give to Salvation Army. So when we went out, we really just promoted what they were already doing. That was a challenge to keep the campaign going. The other thing is you have to think about what United Way does. And there were companies that were shutting down. Some, I remember one of the companies left and went to Singapore. They ended up coming back, but they went there. We lost a lot of money that year. So we always had these challenges that we had to overcome and remain positive at the same time. Still helping the community. Can't make excuses for it. We just did it.
Right. One of the things you said when we were talking before we started recording is that from your perspective, you think sometimes a lot of executive directors of not-for-profits think just because I say, hey, there's a need, that folks should automatically just come flooding in and giving, loads of money. Right?
Yes, sir.
That's not the reality.
No,
right?
not at all.
So what do you think is the secret of making that connection between the not-for-profit and the public and letting them know what that need is so that they'll be willing to make that investment?
Well, I'll tell you what, and that's a great question because for a nonprofit to actually thrive in this community or any community for us that matter, we have to think about things from a business perspective. We have to stop looking at it from a nonprofit, be thinking, well, I'm a charity. No, you're a business. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have to run things that way. You look at a business; they advertise for a reason. Nonprofits usually can't take their dollars and advertise, so you have to leverage as much as you can a free advertisement. Mm-hmm. Your biggest advertisement is going to be your people, your volunteers that go out and speak on your behalf. Right. Just like you and I were talking off before we came on. A lot of the things you heard me talk about was because I'm on those boards and they've made an impact. So if you say there's a secret, the secret is this: people give to people. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give to the organization that you like because of you. You say, hey, I got this great idea. This organization is doing blah, blah, blah. I didn't even hear. That's why you heard blah, blah, blah. It's because of you. Yeah. So people give to people. So if you create the relationship, mm-hmm. and you have to be authentic. And one of the things that we talk about a lot of times in leadership classes and different things is being authentically who you are. I try to tell kids, if you want to make your way in life, first of all, go and befriend an elderly person. Yep. Because there's a lot of wisdom there. Mm-hmm. And be authentic about it, saying, hey, I really want to help out. Teach me the way. And then they will actually start to teach you and show you the things that you need to do in the community to make yourself viable. Most people don't want to do it, but you find the ones that are more successful are the ones that are actually doing it for other people.
That's a great point. That word relationship constantly comes up on this podcast. It doesn't matter the background of the guest, whether they're a business owner or just a leader in the community or whatever. I mean, the importance of a relationship in anything that you do, I think it's been just reinforced over and over and over again. That's a great point. So this is a leadership podcast. And so we kind of sent out a pre-episode questionnaire, and one of the boxes you kind of check that you want to talk about is servant leadership. Yes. And obviously it's very important to you because that's what you've been doing, right? Right. So what makes a good servant leader and then leading by example? What resonates with you there?
Just that, what you just said. Being a servant leader is someone that's going to lead by example. So just the way that I have a 17-year-old daughter. So what I did was with her is I wanted to show her, you know what, Dad is going to tell you what to do, but he's also going to show you what to do. So I'm going to take out the trash. I'm going to wash the dishes. I'm going to do all these things first. I'm going to make up your bed and show you how it should be done. And now let you, learn and walk into this. So as a servant leader, we in our community, we have to take the leadership role at the same time allowing and empowering other people to take in their potential mm-hmm. Perspectives. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, as far as being a servant leader, I know for me, I tell people all the time I wanted to show people their potential because I feel like most people do not live up to their potential because they can't see it. So a lot of times when we talk to people, they say, well, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do it. No. Believe in me. I'll believe for you. You just follow what I'm telling you to do, and then we'll walk this way together.
That's good stuff right there. That kind of dovetails into something I want to talk a little bit more about, and that is the Life Sync Academy. Tell me a little bit about that organization and its purpose, if you don't mind.
Okay, so Life Sync Academy is something that we started about, I want to say last April. Okay. It actually is spun off from Palmer Williams Group, mm-hmm. which is Sherman Williams and David Palmer started a group really to help kids in the low to moderate income areas mm-hmm. That started with sports and things like that. Well, it was always Sherman Williams' dream to have an academy that taught academics and taught things that you didn't get at home and so on and so forth. What makes this organization a little bit different than the rest of them is the fact that they are for children that have incarcerated parents, because he found that the children that has at least one or both of their parents are incarcerated, their statistics are much, much higher for them to be incarcerated or have academic problems and so on and so forth. So this is almost like the organization and some of the things that we're starting to put in place, basically standing in for that parent until they come back into their life.
That's great. And so it goes back to what you just said. You modeled all those things for your daughter. Well, if their parents are incarcerated, they don't have anybody to model.
Exactly.
Right? And so you're trying to fill that void.
Fill that void. Yes, sir.
I mean, do people apply for the program? How do you find your people that you help, and then how are you funded?
So, starting out, we really just looked at, through the judicial system, schools, low to moderate income schools and things like that. We started looking at them and saying, who in that group have parents that are incarcerated? So that's where we started first. And we started getting a list, and we started compiling that list together. And right now we are getting ready to start the new academy. We pushed it back a couple of weeks because we wanted to make sure that we gave everyone the opportunity. Plus, Mardi Gras is getting ready to start, so we had to get all that together. But that's where we're getting our kids from. We get them from all the different schools. Most of them, if not all of them, are low to moderate income, grandparents, aunts, or the guardians. Yeah. And for the most part, we got really, really good feedback, and they're looking to get started.
That's awesome. So you're funded with, you have grants. You rely on public support. Are all the above?
All the above. Okay. It's the board. It's the like we said, it's relationship. So we have organizations that we reach out to. We have individuals, and as we continue to grow, it gets easier because they like to see that success.
That's great. So just for people who listen to the podcast who might want to contribute, how did the LifeSync Academy? How would they go about doing that?
So that would be LifeSync Academy. MOB.org.
Okay, right.
They can go there, and then in all the information there where they can email, they can see where it's going to be, because our class is actually going to be at, they moved them from the Alabama School of, Alabama School of the Deaf and Blind.
Okay.
They moved it from there to Wilmer Hall.
Okay.
So Wilmer Hall is partnering with us to open their space up to allow us to have the classes there.
That's great. Well, I would encourage anyone listening to go out and check that out, because that sounds that's a very worthwhile cause. Yes. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yes, sir.
So talk a little bit about maybe a mentor or two in your life, or who has had an impact on you as far as your professional life, your personal life.
Well, overall, I have to tell you, it starts with my faith. My faith is very important to me, and so with that, I take the principles that you find right there in the good word, the Bible, and you just apply them. A lot of times people say it with rhetoric, but if you apply it, it works. And so with that, I had great parents. I always tell people I lived in a bubble. I had my mom and my dad. Both of them worked, college graduate. Went to school, went to church. And so when it was time for me to go to school, it was like, it wasn't if you're going to school or not. It's just which one you're going to. Yeah. And so a lot of that started at home. So I have to say that my mom and dad were like my first real examples of leaders. Outside of that, there were several mentors that I would have to say that really made a difference. A gentleman in Montgomery, when I lived up there for a brief time, he was an old Air Force colonel, and it was just the way that he carried himself. The things I watched him do, it was just, I wanted to be like that because he just seemed so together. And then when I went to United Way, it's a gentleman named Angelo Miller. Okay. He was the executive director at the time, and he taught me the listening and the how to listen to your employees, because when you would go in there, no matter how busy he was, he would always stop what he's doing, turn to you and listen to whatever you, good or bad, whatever it was. He also empowered us. I'll give you a quick example. I used to ride road bikes around town, and I was riding bikes, and I saw that they had a fundraiser at the square. And what was intriguing about it was you could go through the tunnel. All right. Okay. And so with that being said, I participated in an event, went over to Spanish Ford and made our way back, and Cochran Bridge, which was very, very hard. Made our way back, and I remember I'm like, you know what? I'm looking around. I'm like, I can do this. It was a lot of people. It was They had Chick-fil-A. They had all the stuff. I said, I can do this. I went back to the office that Monday, and I said, hey, I want to run something by you. And I told him, I said, I want to do a bicycle event. And he looked, and I explained it all to him. He leaned back, and he put his hands behind his head, and he says, make it happen. That's all he said, make it happen. I had no budget. I had no idea. I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember leaving there and just really creating it for him. So he was instrumental. And then I say, as far as outside of that, a guy named Joel Manby. Are you familiar with him?
I don't think so.
All right. So he was on Undercover Boss.
Okay.
Some time ago. We actually had the opportunity to hear him speak out in Las Vegas when I was a part of the fairground. And we went out there, and he was speaking, and he was talking about how he had to make a choice And he had worked for Mitsubishi for many years, and he was way up in the company, and he had to go to Japan and so on and so forth. So this next promotion put him in Japan for another 6 months or so, and he had his family and everything. He had to make a choice. Am I going to do this continually, or am I going to change? So he came back, and he remembers staying in Atlanta, and he walked away from a really, really nice job for his family. And with that being said, that's where the idea came from. With the idea, he wrote a book called Love Works. And he is the CEO now of where, Dollywood and that entertainment up there. And he spoke about how they led with love. So that really intrigued me. And so anyway, with that being said, I went and got his book. And just quickly, here's some of the chapters. Patience, having self-control in difficult situations, kind, encouraging others and enthusiasm, trusting, unselfish, truthful, forgiving, and dedicated. So they really started to push love in the organization. And he said people didn't get fired. They fired themselves because they learned how to empower people, give them everything they need. And those who didn't belong in the organization work themselves out.
So that's a great insight. And I would submit to you that really that's a great roadmap for not just business, but life.
Yes, sir.
All those things that you mentioned, if you can master those, then you will be successful in no matter what you do. So that book is Love Works by Joel Manby. That's great. Thank you for that. I do want to ask you about this. We asked you for your kind of leadership philosophy, and you were 4 words: go with the flow.
Go with the flow.
Explain that.
So I look at it like this: in order to be a good leader, we have to learn how to follow. So if you don't know how to follow instruction, if you don't know how to follow the lead of whomever the leader may be, it's going to make it very difficult for you. So my thing is, in order for me to lead others, I first had to follow. I had to learn how to pick up the trash, go to clean the bathrooms, and go do all these things. And so one of the things you hear people say is, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done myself or willing to do. Mm-hmm. And so that means if I'm willing to do it and I've been blessed to be the leader, then my people should be able to do it as well. And so it's pretty much go with the flow. You have to have integrity. Mm-hmm. It's real big. And you have to be able to stand up and know that, like I told my daughter, she's 17 now, she works at a restaurant, and she was telling me about one of the bosses. And she was having a hard time. I said, okay. And she was still dealing with it. I said, okay, let's stop for a second. What is the result that you're looking for? What do you want from it? She keeps talking about it, but it's like, what's the result? Do you want to go and talk to her? Do you want her to change? What? Because if you just talking to talk, you're making yourself frustrated. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure out what the goal is. And so once she started looking at that, she started realizing that, I say, you only work 2 days a week. So how often are you really seeing her? And she started looking at like, okay, so can you deal with it? You're like, yeah, okay. All right, we're good. Go with the flow.
That's great. And look, that applies not just to 17-year-olds working in a restaurant. That applies to life.
Yes, sir.
Man, you know what I mean? That's great. You told a story, and we don't have to get into specifics, but about an issue that you had to deal with when you were at the fairgrounds, I think highlighted leading through crisis.
Yes, sir.
So what are some important things that you've learned as you've had to lead through those difficult times?
One, the communication part of it.
Yeah.
We must communicate well with each other. We have to be transparent. You have to, you heard me say, you be authentic. Mm-hmm. If it hurts, it hurts. If it makes you laugh, you smile. It's that sort of thing. So with that, through difficult situations, I know the first thing was communicating. Mm-hmm. Let them know. I tell people all the time, manage expectations. So we told them, hey, this is what we're expecting from you, and what can we do? What do you expect from us? I didn't want it to be just simply, I'm going to tell you. I want to hear back the feedback from you. Mm-hmm. What do you expect from us? And then you give us time, a reasonable amount of time to make the changes or whatever it needs to be done. And then when they chose to go a different direction, then at that time I had to make some difficult choices. And we were, getting ready for the fair to get started in the next couple of months or so on and so forth. And we knew that this choice had to be made and it had to be done now in order for us to save the organization later. Mm-hmm. And so we made the decision to cut ties, and we covered all our bases, and everything. And we did that, and we informed the board of what was, going on and everybody. And the fair is much better today because of that one decision. And, the next hire after that just kind of propelled the fair to a whole nother atmosphere. So it's in good hands now.
Yeah, very good. So other than Love Works by Joel Manby, any other books you can point to that have had an impact on you?
I tell you, really, the biggest thing is, I have to say that, my love for my faith, just reading the Bible. And let me give you this example. When I was talking to one of the low to moderate income schools, and we were talking to the kids, and I talked to them about financial education. But I went there and I told them, I said, let's have a candid conversation. I said, how many of you guys go to church? And I said, and they all raised their hand. I said, okay, good. We can take all this politically correct stuff. We can put it down for a minute. I said, okay. I said, I didn't come here to preach. I just simply wanted to point something out to you about our neighborhoods. And I said, there's a lot of crime, a lot of different things going on in the hood. And they said, yeah. I said, now let's just for a second, let's go to Exodus chapter 20. And they like, uh-oh, here we go. And I said, but that's where the 10 Commandments are found. I said, now look, it says, honor your father and mother. Tell me where in what world is that wrong? To honor your father and mother. To do what your mom and dad asked you to do, right? And they looked and they're like, I said, okay, thou shalt not steal. I said, so let's stop stealing. I said, stop committing adultery, right? So I said, leave her husband alone, leave his wife alone, right? And I said, and I gave him a few more. And I said, okay, so I just went through 4 or 5 things. And we hadn't said anything else about anything, all the other stuff. We haven't brought up Jesus. We hadn't brought up any of all that stuff. We just simply gave you the moral part of it. That's it. And if you followed the moral parts, your neighborhood would change overnight. If everyone did that, the neighborhood changes. That's not revolutionary. It's just simply obeying. The same thing, just like with this book. Be patient. If everybody practiced patience, wouldn't we be in a better place? If we said, let's everybody be unselfish. Let's everybody take on forgiveness. Hey, you messed up. It's okay. Consider thyself. If we did that, wouldn't we have a better community? Wouldn't businesses be better? But we don't believe that. I think a lot of times we believe in ourselves that I have the answer. Well, Joel Manby just gave us just some principles. He doesn't have all the answers, but he gave you simple principle where you ask the question, treating you nice or you nice, would that be a better way of being rather than the way that things are going now? And they looked at it and it's like, never thought about it that way.
Kerry, we came to church and the podcast broke out. I mean, this is great. I mean, I'm fired up. Ira, you've been outstanding, and I could sit here and talk to you for another 2 hours, but we don't have that time, unfortunately.
Yes,
but I have really thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for all those insights.
Yes, sir.
As we leave, you have a 17-year-old daughter. Only child, or you have
the only child?
Okay, only child. So your baby.
And my
girl,
wife is the only child, which is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you're dealing with a lot with only children there, but anyway, so your baby girl.
Yes.
All right. If you could know one thing back when you were 17 that you wish you'd known then, that you know now, and you can give her that one piece of advice, what would that be?
The one thing that I would say if I was 17, I would have liked to have known that there's no shortcuts, that there's no easy way out. You have to work hard at whatever it is. If it's a podcast, you got to work hard at it. If it's marketing, you got to work hard at it. If it's golf. My dad always taught me, he said, I don't care what job you do, but be the best at it. So if my son is out there cleaning the streets out there in Mobile, Alabama, I want to know that when we go on that street, that's my son cleaned that street. That's how he taught me. It doesn't matter what it is, because as long as you're doing legal work, it's noble. It took me a while to get that, because I tried every shortcut. Right? And so that would be the takeaway.
Nothing wrong with that. Ira Bates, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. As always, a big thanks to producer Kerry Wolf and editor Johnny Gwynn. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.